told you SQL model and both SQL Alchemy, they're based on SQL. Okay. So they're designed to help you with using SQL through objects, through Python code, right? But it's still very useful to understand SQL. So first, I will show you how to create a database and how to create like table. And that same thing we will replicate using our SQL model or using our Python code that we have, the SQL library that we have installed, right? So first thing you can see, once I open this a blank, once I open this DB browser for SQLite, you will see everything is blank here. So at the top, not able to zoom in this, but at the top left, you will be able to see this new database button. Just click on that. Okay, it will ask you where do you want. I'll just give a folder path and the file name. I will call this as uh, new db dot test, new db test, or whatever you can call dot. Okay, that's it. Okay, then it is asking me for a table name. I can give any table name. Let's say students. Okay, and then I can add, like, say a column, a field name, like name. Will add ID. ID is an integer. Name is this. Okay. Or a string. All right. Or a text. I think it's called as text. Right. So I can just create this. And a table has been created. Okay. What you can do is you can also create using the SQL command here. So I can come here to execute SQL tab, and I think here I will be able to zoom. And then I can just write a SQL here, like create table. What will be a table name? Let's call this as university. Okay. And then I can give like the column names that I have. So I'll call this column, let's say, as university ID, okay, which can be an integer. Then let's say I want the name of the university should be a text and this should not be null, right? Or let's say I want the location and this can be a text. Like this way, using a SQL also you can create. This is the way that we create a table, right? Correct. So if I run this, here you can see at the top, I am able to see execute. So execution finished. If I go in the database structure, you'll be able to see these two tables have been created. What do you know? Now the only thing is you have to write the changes. So if I don't write these changes, you can see this button right here. No, if I don't write these changes, it will not be saved. Okay. If I close the database, it is telling me you don't want to save. No, no, I want to save. So I will go and write the changes, and now I'm able to close the database. So now if I go and open the database, instead of new database, I will click open database. And if I open the same database, all my data will be retained. Okay. So make sure that you save the data and then you close it. This is how you use your DB browser, as simple as that. Okay. The tables have been created, and this is how you use your DB browser. Then easy. Now, let's see how we can actually create the same tables using our Python code. Now we will get into the coding. First, you need to make sure that you are inside the project root. Okay, and make sure your virtual environment is activated. Why? Because we've installed there. It's not compulsory, but it is a recommended and best practice that you use a virtual environment. Okay. and make sure it is activated. So now we will learn about the table, how to define a table with SQL model, and how we will create the same SQLite database that we just did, right? It had two things, name and university. The two tables were there. How can we do that using our Python code, and how we will be able to use the DB browser to actually confirm the changes if they were made or not. Okay, so we will do the same thing. Okay, name, ID, these three tables we have to create, these two tables with these many columns. Okay, so first thing that we need to remember is there is something called as engine, right? This is called as engine. So to talk to the database, we need a connection between the engine and the code. Okay, sorry, the database and our code, right? And to do this connection, there is something called as the engine. Okay, think of engine as a plug. It is the component that will handle the communication part for you. Okay, it does not hold the data itself. It is a factory, okay, that will create connections for us when we need them. Now remember this code, how will this code interact with this file? There should be some connection between that, and that connection can be achieved using the engine. Okay, so we're going to be using SQLite. SQLite, as I told you, it is a file-based database, meaning what? Your whole database lives in a single file on your hard disk. Okay, and we communicate using a connection string. Okay, the connection string looks like this. SQLite, then this. So for each database, there is a different connection string. Okay, for Postgres, it will be different. For let's say MySQL, it will be different. For HANA, it will be different, right? For Oracle DB, it will be different. For MySQL server, it will be different, right? So for different databases, it will be a different. For Hive, it will be different. For HTTP, every it will have a different connection string. Okay, for SQLite, it is as simple as that. You have to write SQLite and then semicolon, and then three forward slashes, and then the file. Okay. So what does this connection string does? It simply tells the engine that, look, here is the file name, whatever the file name is there. It is in this folder. Go ahead and make a connection with this file. Okay. So first concept is the engine. Then we need to define the model. So now how do we tell Python that a specific class should be a database table? First, we will use the concept of our object-oriented programming, which is called as inheritance. Okay, your class must inherit from the SQL model class. Okay, secondly, and this is very important, that you must pass table equals to true. If you don't pass this table equals to true into the class arguments, then it will not create a table. This table equal to true, it tells that here you take this is a table, create a table in the database. Okay, and your class attributes like your name, your email, automatically they become the columns in that table. Okay, we will use the standard Python types like our int, str, boolean types, right? Same type we will use. Okay, we will define what the data goes into that column. Okay, and then you can use the field function as well, which is to add some extra rules, which is known as metadata. I will come to that. like if you want to make sure it is a primary key or not, right? Got it? So two things are important. First, you have to create an engine. Using an engine, you will be able to create an connection. Okay. And then if you want to create a table, you just have to simply create a class. Okay. Create a class, inherit from the SQL model. Okay. Make sure you pass the parameter table equals to true so that it knows that, yeah, this is the table. This is not a normal class. And then simply you write the variables you wrote. No, like that way variables you write, and that will become the columns. Okay. So let's get into coding. How do we actually do this? Okay. So I'll open here. First, I will create a simple file. Let's call it SQL model.py, and it can be anything. Let's write test.py. Okay. So first, before even getting into that, we need to create an engine. Okay. So engine will be from where? So this engine, remember, why did we install that SQL model? Because it is a library. So we need to import that library first, right? So I write from import SQL model. As simple as that. Now, if I want specific things from this, how do I do? From SQL model, import. Now, what do I need? I need an engine. So for the engine, it is called as create engine. Okay. You can see as soon as I do something, it is giving me options. See this, automatically these things are coming, right? That is the advantage of your SQL model. The type hints, the auto completion, all of this is available. I need a field class. I need an SQL model class. SQL model. So what did I tell you? If you want to create a table, what you have to do? You have to create a simple class. So let's create the class. What was the class name? Students. Okay. We call this as students. Next thing, what did I tell you? That you must import the SQL model. You must inherit the SQL model class. Same thing we will do. How do we inherit, guys? You have to write SQL model inside this. Then what is the parameter that you need to pass? Table equals to true. Got it? This much. And then inside this, whatever uh, variables that you give, no, that will become your columns. So let's say that I want ID. Okay, so this ID will become as my one column. Name, this will become as another column. Okay, so here you just simply don't do that. You have to give the hints. Okay, what is the data type of this? So you write a semicolon and then you specify the type. I will give this as integer. This is called as that typing. And then you write the name. Okay, this is the string data type. This is a integer data type, right? So that it will become. And like I told you, you can use a field. You can use a field function so that you will be able to give it different. You can use the field to add extra rules, like if you want to set it a primary key or not, right? That will tell the database if this is a unique identifier or it is a primary key or it is a foreign key. All of that can be done using a field. So I'll do that. So equals to field. Okay. And then I have to write the open close parenthesis inside this. I need to write primary key equals to true. Then this becomes a primary key. Okay. Next table, what is the next table? Similarly, what was the next table? Class, university. table equals to true, same syntax I'll follow. So what you can do is you can give options what it should be. Okay. If you want nullable columns, then you have to give, previously what they used to do is they used to use something called as collections, which was the library. I think it was from typing, not from collections. Yeah, not collections, optional. So they used to give options like this way, but now due to the new syntax, what you can do is you can just simply write this pipe symbol, and then you can say if it is what is the other data type. So let's say I want it to be a string or anything. So I can give different types like that. So let's say that I want a student as age. Okay. So I will give age as an integer. And if I don't know if their age, so I can also pass this none. None is equivalent to null in your database. And I will assign the default value as none. Okay. You can see I'm using equal to, that means by default, it will be assigned to none. Done with this. This is how you create tables. But now we need to create a connection. We need to create the engine. What is an engine? It is the object which will handle the communication with the database, right? So how do we create an engine? Like I told you, we have this create engine, right? This function, we'll just simply call this function. And here you have to pass the database file name. Okay. Now, if you want to create a SQL light file, what is the string like? Like I told you, the string should look something like this. Okay. So we will do just that. What I will do, I will create a variable called as engine. And inside this, I will call this function create engine. Okay. And in this, I will pass the URL, which is SQLite p forward slashes, and then the actual file name. So let's say, what is the file name that I want to give? I need to check a path. So I'll create one file here. What should I call it? SQLite db.db. This is the file I will just call it. Okay, and then I will copy this path. I'll paste it there. Okay, so I've just pasted the path there. And then I will just write echo equals to true. So it will give me the debugging options as well, what is going on and everything. Okay. And yeah, then I will call the skill model class. I'll write the metadata dot create all, and then I will pass the engine inside of this. Okay. This is what I have done. So this is pretty standard. I hope you have understood. How do we create tables? Write a class, pass the SQL model, pass the parameter table equals to true. Whatever variables that you define, they will become a column. If you want to give the type, what type of this column that you want. So id column, I want it to be of integer type. Okay. If you want to give options, let's say age, I want it to be integer or none type, which is null type. Okay, then you can pass this as well. If you want to give, make it as a primary key, you use the field variable, you assign equals to field, use the field function, and inside that you pass as primary key equals to true. Let's say if you want to give a default value, you give a default value in this as well. So default equals to, let's say none. I'll tell you why I'm naming this primary key as none default later. We should not do that. And normally we will have one engine file itself, one engine object for your whole application, and you have to reuse it everywhere else. Okay. So this is the thing, create engine. Inside that, this is the syntax, three things, and then you give the location where you want, where is your actual file. Okay, so this is where my file is. I've given the location for that. I've given the path for that. So SQLite, it supports special database which lives in memory. All right. And then I've given echo as true, comma, echo as true. That's it. And then I've used this, which will create. So echo equals to true. It will print all the SQL statements it will execute, which will help you understand what is happening with your data. It is good for debugging, basically. Okay. So SQL model defines its own create function. Okay. In SQL Alchemy, it is a different thing. Now everything is in place. We have to finally create the database. We have to finally create the table, right? So creating the engine, it will not create the DB file. You must first run SQL model.metadata.create all, and only then it will create the database file. Okay. So both things can be done in a single step. So SQL model has this metadata attribute. It is an instance of the metadata class. So whenever you create a class like this, which is inheriting from your SQL model, and it is configured with table equals to true, it is registered with this metadata attribute. Okay. So by this time, all of this is registered now. And then when you call the create all, okay, this metadata has an method called as create all. It takes the engine and it uses it to create the database. It uses it to create all the tables registered in the metadata object. Okay, what are the tables? Students, university. How does it know that these are the tables? Because they are inheriting from the SQL model. So this SQL model has something called as metadata. So now this SQL model, whenever you inherit it from it, it knows that, yeah, this is the table. Okay. And then when you run this, it will create the tables, it will create the database. Okay. So let's see, let's try to run this and see how is it working for us or not. Is there anything that we need to change? So I will write the code. Simply you can run from here, but it is not linked to my virtual environment. I will run it from the virtual environment itself. Let me first save this file. Okay. So now I will say Python Python, I'll write my file name, which is test.py. Okay, now I see something like this. You can see after I typed it, it has given me something like this. reduce the size, begin, raw, SQL, create table, student create table, university, engine.commit. So now actually let's check. Copy this path. Will open my, I will close this database. I will open a new database. I will go to this file location. I'll open this DB. And now you're able to see that these two tables are created, right? As you remember, this age I had not created in the previous one, but in this one I have created. So you can see this is how you create a new table. Got it? I want you guys to actually replicate this. Okay. I'll share the code with you. I want you to try it out. And check for yourself. You can change the name, you can change the columns, anything that you want, you change it, and then you create. I'll give you 5 minutes for this to replicate this process. So as you can see, previously they used this typing in which they can use the optional class and then you can they give the option. So optional, if you don't give anything, that means it is either this or none, or you can separate it with comma. Then you can give int, string, whatever you want, right? So this is how the code looks like. Define a class, you inherit with SQL model, you make the table equals to true, right? And then you just add the attributes, whatever the attributes are there in your class, the class attributes, they will become your columns. Got it? This is how you go on ahead with this. As simple as that. So this is ID is a attribute, name is an attribute, secret name, age, all of this will become the columns in my table called as hero. Make sure that you pass SQL model, inherit from SQL model, and pass the value table equals to true. Got it? So you generate the database. How do you generate the database? If you want to generate the database, we have to set up the file name. Okay. You use a variable to ask the file name. Okay. And then you use the URL. What is the URL? SQLite colon three forward slashes, and then you have to specify the file name. What have I done here? I have just simply, instead of defining two variables, only in one I've just given it. Instead of this, you can follow this method where they have defined the file name as well and the URL as well. Okay. Next, we will run the create engine. Okay. There is an argument called as echo equals to true. I will highly recommend this because it prints the raw SQL queries to your terminal. So you can exactly see what is happening under the hood. And then finally, we will use or we will define a function called as create DB and tables. You don't need to do this, but it is better to do this actually. What we have done, instead of creating a function directly, we have called this, right? Inside, we call this SQL model metadata dot create all engine. We pass the engine in this, right? What I have done here, instead of that, I have just put it inside one function. And then when that is executed, I will call that function. This is the magic command. What this command will do, it will look at every class, whatever the classes you have in your file. It will look for those classes in which you have written or you have inherited from SQL model, and where you have written table equals to true. So for all of those classes, it will run the SQL to create them as a table in the database file. Got it? So you should never trust blindly that your code worked. You should always verify it. So whatever the script I gave, you run that Python script. Make sure your virtual environment is activated. You run it. You locate that database file, and then you open it using the DB browser. You'll be able to see the tables, whatever the table names that I had given, whatever columns you have given, that you will be able to actually see. So I want you to run this file, whatever I have given, and you check it. Use the DB browser to inspect. Give me a thumbs up if you're done. I think most of you have already finished this. Superb. You guys are very fast. Amazing. Okay. Now it is your turn. Okay. We'll build an inventory system for a bookstore. I want you to create a file named main.py. Okay. In that, define a class named book. Okay. Make sure it is inheriting from SQL model and the table is set to true. It should have an ID, it should have a title, it should have an author, it should have the price, it should have an in stock. These are all the variables, these are all the columns that it needs to have. Okay. Set up your engine as well for this. Create the call engine, call the create all for the engine, run the script and check in your database if it was created or not. So for this, I will give you 5 to 10 minutes. Please complete this task. As soon as you're done, give me a thumbs up. Simple, right? Done with this, guys? Not done yet? Some people have finished. Okay, that's amazing. Let's try to see how can we code this out. Very simple, right? Let me actually refactor this code a little bit, like based on whatever I was given. So I'll create a function which will create the DB and the tables. Okay, I'll put this command inside this. So I don't necessarily need to create the tables every time, right? And I will call an if dunder name. This is called as dunder name. If you didn't know, double under name is equals to dunder main. And then I will call this function. That's it. I've just refactored it a little bit. And let's actually check what happens if I use the same database and I try to create inside of this. So I need class book, call it books as per the database naming convention. SQL model table equals to true. Okay. Then I need an ID. What else do I need? It is easier for me. ID should be an integer, should be a primary key. I'll tell you why I'm giving this as a none later on. Field, I will call it as default equals to none. And then primary key equals to, sorry, primary key equals to true. Just a second, just comment out. Then I add the title. It is required. That means I will not give it none. I want it to be string. Author is also required. So I will call it as string. Price, it is integer, which is optional. So int slash none. I will assign it as none. Default will be gone to none. In stock, this is a Boolean value. So I'll call it as bool, right? Default to true. Okay. So that's it. That's it. Rest everything will be same. If you want, you can reduce this. So as per this SQLite file location, whatever I can call it. What is the thing that I called it before? SQL file name, SQL URL. Excellent. The file name I can just copy from here. What is my file name? And that is my URL. So SQLite is appended and this file name is coming later. Here I only want to pass the SQLite URL. That's it. So it looks much cleaner now, right? Engine equals to create engine, SQLite URL. That's it. And then I will call this function. Right? Anything else do I need in this? Create all is happening, right? So let's see what happens if I give the same name and I've added one file in this or one table in this. Python test.py. So as you can see, it has created one table called as books. So if I open this database again, now you will be able to see one books has been created. and you will be able to see others are as it is. Okay. And even in the raw SQL, you will be able to see the other tables were not created. Why? Because those were previously created. So again and again, it is not creating, right? So this is one thing that you should notice about in here. Got it? So it is as simple as that to create a table in a database. Now, same thing, guys, if you are using a different database, you just need to change this URL. Okay, there is something else that is needed in that, but we'll talk about that later. And this is the format, right? To create a table, you write inherit from SQL model, table equals to true. You create columns, you just give the class attributes, you define the type, and hence it is as simple as that to create. Got it? Now let's look at some practices and mistakes to avoid. So you must not forget to add table equals to true. If you do forget this, it will not create a table. As simple as that. Okay. You should so always type your ID as optional int of and set default to none. Okay. The database, it handles generating the ID number auto incrementally. So your Python code should not require it. So what this means, so you see that I am optional means this, I'm giving this or symbol, no, this pipe symbol. Okay, that is basically the new way, new syntax to write that. So or of none. Okay, so once I do this, because the Python, it doesn't assign the ID. Who will assign the ID? If you want it to be assigned automatically, the database assigns the ID. Your Python code will not do it. That is the reason you should give it optional as none and you should set the default to none. Why? Because the auto increment is a feature of your database. You don't want Python to interfere with that feature. Okay. And the next thing is there that you should set this echo equals to true. When you're learning, no, you will see that raw SQL, what is happening. And that gives you some insight that will help you connect the dot between Python and the database. Okay. So superb, guys, very well. Whoever have finished this, it's a good job that you are now working with a database structure. Next, we will see how to create instances, how to create rows, and how to create session. What is a session? Right? It is an object which we use to manage our transactions, right? And all in all, it will be a very amazing journey. We'll continue this SQL model and we will take this forward to, learning completely how you will be able to insert into the database, how you will be able to, read the data, how to filter the data, what is indexing, how to update data, how to delete data, how to do joins, everything we will cover. So that's it for today, everyone. Thank you all very much for attending, and I hope you have understood what is SQL model, what is an ORM, why should we use a database, what is the difference between SQL model and SQL alchemy, and how to work with a virtual environment. So this is the first step where we have created a table and you're getting used to this DB browser as well, right? So you'll be using this DB browser for the entirety of the SQL model sessions that we'll be having to just experiment with it. So what I would suggest is go back home today, experiment with the code that you have, try to understand much what you have recapped, and as much as possible, try to learn on your own. Do not be dependent on me. Try to learn as much as possible from your end. That will give you a much edge compared to others. And then we can actually move on to the engineering process where you will solve the engineering problems. That will be really amazing, where you have to do the problem solving over and over again. Okay, so that's it from my side. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a good evening ahead. Thank you, everyone.